Welcome to the Friday, February the 27th, 2026 edition of the Daily Article Podcast from Denison Forum. I'm narrator Chris Elkins, giving voice to today's daily article written by Senior Editor for Theology, Dr. Ryan Denison. When U.S. forces captured former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, the strike was broadly hailed as one of the most impressive displays of force in recent military history. In the weeks since, we've learned more about how they pulled off the attack so seamlessly, including that Anthropic's AI tool, Claude, played a role in the operation. Now, the nature of that role is still a bit nebulous, but Anthropic had quite a few questions about how the Pentagon used its technology. As a company spokesman stated, any use of Claude, whether in the private sector or across government, is required to comply with our usage policies, which govern how Claude can be deployed, end quote. And a key part of those usage policies is that their AI cannot be used to, quote, facilitate or promote any act of violence or intimidation, end quote. As we'll discuss in a minute, AI has given plenty of reasons to be wary of crossing that line, but Anthropic had to know that this stance could pose something of a problem when it comes to the military applications of their tools. After all, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has not been shy about the role he sees for AI going forward. In December, Hegseth remarked that, quote, the future of American warfare is here, and it's spelled AI, end quote. And at an event last month where the Pentagon announced it would be working with XAI in a similar capacity, he was clear that the Department of Defense would not employ AI models that won't allow you to fight wars, end quote, which many took as a shot at Anthropic's concerns. To further complicate matters, it's likely that the U.S. has already used Claude to help the military prepare for a potential war with Iran. While negotiations are ongoing, the mediator seems to be the only one who thinks they're going well. So, against that backdrop, Hegseth has given Anthropic until 5:01 this afternoon to decide whether to grant the U.S. military unrestricted use of its technology. If they do not, and the early signs aren't promising, then Hegseth has warned that he will consider either invoking the Defense Production Act to force Anthropic's cooperation or list them as a supply chain risk, which could void any of the company's other defense-adjacent contracts. But whether Claude is deemed too essential to lose or too untrustworthy to keep, it could have a profound impact on Anthropic's business going forward. Still, their concerns about how the military uses AI are not unwarranted, and a recent test by Kenneth Payne at King's College London offers a good reminder of why. In an attempt to see how artificial intelligence would run a conflict if given the chance, Payne set ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini against each other in a series of simulated war games. The models faced off 21 times, taking a total of 329 turns. They also provided extensive reasoning for each of their actions. As Chris Stokell-Walker described, quote, the AIs were given an escalation ladder, allowing them to choose actions ranging from diplomatic protests and complete surrender to full strategic nuclear war, end quote. By the time they were done, at least one model chose nuclear war in 95% of the games. None chose to surrender, regardless of how bad things were going. That's not good. And as Tong Zhao at Princeton University pointed out, quote, major powers are already using AI in wargaming, but it remains uncertain to what extent they are incorporating AI decision support into actual military decision-making processes, end quote. While those countries seem hesitant to fully grant AI control over the keys to their missiles, it only takes one nation to set off a global catastrophe. To this point, the principle of mutually assured destruction has prevented that scenario from playing out. But what if AI isn't as afraid of death as people are? And what if it sees striking first as the most logical way to prevent its own destruction? If Payne's tests are any indication, those conclusions are not all that unlikely, especially as AI becomes more relied upon for background calculations and scenario building. As Zhao warns, quote, under scenarios involving extremely compressed timelines, military planners may face stronger incentives to rely on AI, end quote. The military already appears to be heading down that road to some extent, and it's highly unlikely that they're the only ones. And if someone chooses to cross that line, chances are that a very human fear will be the driving factor. To be honest, when I consider this topic and where it could lead, fear is pretty high up on my list of responses as well. It's weird to potentially watch the central plot of an apocalyptic film play out in real life. The logical side of me knows that it probably won't get that far, but fear rarely has any use for logic, which is what makes it so dangerous. I think that's part of why Jesus spent so much time talking about fear and warning against letting it play an executive role in our decision-making. Take Jairus, for example. When he approached Jesus to seek healing for his daughter, only to have someone come up while they were on their way to tell them it was too late, in Mark 5, verse 36, Jesus told him, do not fear, only believe. In The Message, Eugene Peterson translates this command as, don't listen to them, just trust me. When fear threatens to consume our thoughts or direct our actions, hearing the Lord say, just trust me, can be exactly what we need most. That doesn't mean that such trust will be easy or silencing the fears will be simple, but it's a good reminder that the choice of whom we listen to is always ours to make. And the more often we choose Jesus, the easier it gets to do so in the future. So, where do you need to trust Jesus today? Are there any fears clawing at your heart and mind? I'm still a bit freaked out by the AI stuff, but perhaps you are as well. My goal today, though, is to listen to God rather than fear and to trust that He knows how it's going to turn out. And just as importantly, Romans 8:28 reveals that He promises to bring good out of it, no matter how it ends. Holding tight to that promise won't always make the fears go away, but after all, sometimes the fears are justified, but it can give us a new perspective on them, one born of peace rather than anxiety. Let's pray for that peace today. We're grateful for our podcast listeners. If you find the Daily Article podcast helps you better understand today's news and cultural issues and then respond biblically, please rate and review the Daily Article podcast on the platform from which you subscribe. That helps people find and follow the Daily Article podcast.